Hey guys, on today's show we're going to be talking to Craig Marshall, motivational speaker, yogi, and former monk of Self-Realization Fellowship. In part one of this two-part series, he's going to share with us his amazing life journey and how he has mastered the art of life transitions, as well as the value of meditation and introspection. These tools can help us achieve our greatest potential and enable us to live more dharmic lives. All this and more coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming today. I am so excited to have my guest here today, Mr. Craig Marshall, who is a motivational speaker, the monk, the legend. He has been very instrumental in terms of my own spiritual upbringing. So Craig's here. Hello, Craig. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Joey. I feel like that I and many people, our lives are in kind of a weave, and we've had so much in common for such a long time that I think it's a real blessing to be around people that you can trust on a deep level and really become co-collaborators, because I think particularly in this lifetime, we have an opportunity to learn a lot. And on our own, that's pretty tough, but when we can dialogue with people that we respect and have really shared values on a deep level, I think we can really speed up that process of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very true. And so for those folks that are subscribed to my channel or watching this video that don't necessarily know much about your journey, maybe we can talk a little bit more about, your background, your experiences in childhood, monkhood, and post-monkhood, and maybe piece all that together to see the type of person that you are.
Yeah, I tell people I'm a pretty strange person. I'm almost living my life backwards in many respects, I think, because I grew up in the Los Angeles area, and I had very loving, simple parents. They were childhood sweethearts from Kentucky, so I had a lot of grounding and love and simplicity and all of that. But I stumbled onto an acting career when I was young. So I was in the Hollywood scene and did hundreds and hundreds of commercials and television shows starting when I was 10 years old. So I grew up around celebrities and very dynamic people. And I was never Hollywood, really. I was just a kid as an actor. But I think that experience troubled me a little bit because even though I was around very creative and beautiful people, I saw a lot of insecurity, and I think that troubled me on some kind of deep level and asked me to question what life was all about, because I was a fairly introspective person even as a kid. And then I went to USC Film School, and when I graduated, in my senior year, I read the book Autobiography of a Yogi, this classic by Yogananda. And within a year, I had joined Self-Realization Fellowship, and then shortly afterwards, I became a monk. And it was a real calling for me. I mean, I literally was drawn to this intuitively. And when I was in the ashram, I met people and that really helped me grow up and wise up. And it was just an extraordinary experience, the likes of which I can't compare anything. And so I lived in the self-realization ashrams, and I continued to make movies for the organization. For 15 years, I was in charge of training the youngest monks who came from all over the world. And I was a minister, so I baptized babies and performed marriages and Sunday morning services and traveled the world lecturing and met thousands of really inspired people. So that was wonderful. And then I went through a midlife course correction, as many of us do. And I ended up, I actually worked for the fellowship for another 5 years. And then now I have become a public speaker and a one-on-one personal life coach. So I help people with personal and professional issues and moving forward. So I think, if anything, I'm kind of a hybrid and kind of understand the weave or the blend or the integration of the inner and outer aspects of life. And I think that's really important these days with what's going on in the world, because we're all kind of being forced, I believe, to really learn a lot in this particular lifetime.
Sure, sure. And I mean, to me, you know, in hindsight, when you look at all your different life experiences, it seems like one thing was a stepping stone to another, to another, to another, which led to something bigger, led to greater paradigm shifts in your life, and led you to where you are today.
Oh, I think it's quite archetypal, because I think that I'm taking a look at a number of things, and I talk to people all over the world these days. And so I sense how people are really looking for direction. And you might say that the world is kind of fragile these days, or at least people feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't quite see it like that, because I think really the world fundamentally, to me, is like a mirror. It's a reflection of our collective consciousness. And a lot of us would like to make a difference and see changes in the world. But I think that's achieved predominantly through us changing ourselves, because we can't directly change other people. And that setup is perfect. So we're forced to really take a look at ourselves. It is self-realization at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this old Greek word, enteleki. It always stuck in my mind. It's a very uncommon word, but it really means the sense that the acorn has of the oak tree, you know? So within our consciousness, I think, we have kind of a matrix of our potential. And we all are hybrids, right? We all have a higher self, and we all have a very worldly ego, and which connects us to the wide world. And it's not like good and bad, but they are different selves. And I think that we all know many things on a deep level, but it's kind of in the back of our mind. And so when I work with people one-on-one, I'm actually helping them, facilitating a conversation to bring that to the front of their mind, so that they really are talking and living and pointing toward what's deepest within them. And one of my sort of early mentors in life, because I always was studying a broad range of subject, was this fellow Alvin Toffler, that wrote this sort of landmark book called Future Shock. And he wrote it in 1970. And he said that what's going to happen in the future over the next 50 years, and we're almost there, 2020, is, he said, people would have to learn so much, so fast, that they just couldn't handle it. And so he's famous for this particular quote here: the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So I would say for the last 25 years of my life, I've really been committed to unlearning. And that's a challenge, because we're questioning our beliefs, our cultural programming, and really trying to boil it down to what's true, not the inherited truth that we've gotten from our culture, which is, coming from way, way back. And we're moving toward a more enlightened age. So the opportunity and mandate to learn, I think, in this particular life is more important than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, this sort of ties into the topic of the conversation that we were going to have today, which is, something that you've helped me out considerably, the art of transitioning. So we're constantly undergoing change in our life. And, as I understand, we have, the old part that we're trying to let go, and then the new part that we're trying to embrace. And most of us live in this perpetual state of limbo, where we haven't quite embraced the new, and we haven't fully let go of the old yet. And that can create stress, within our consciousness. It can create, certainly problems in all of the systems, of our life, our family, our work, all these different aspects, our spirituality. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that. So, because, when you had spent time with me doing, counseling, we had talked about developing proficiency in undergoing life's transitions. And I wanted to talk to you about, like, how does one develop proficiency in navigating these life experiences and transitioning?
That is such a timely question, Joey, because virtually all of the people that I work with are in some transition, and usually multiple transitions. And the first thing I have to say to those people is congratulations, because transitions are what it's all about. Evolution means change. It means growth. It means learning. It means unlearning. And, I think that we all are highly cultured beings. And that sounds nice, the word cultured, but it just means that we are products of a cult, right? And if you and I, we're born here in the West, in the 20th century, in a primary kind of urban and suburban environment. And so we have a whole set of beliefs, thousands of things which are embedded in us from our earliest memory. And they exist in our subconscious mind, so we're not even aware of them. And we glue all those beliefs together and we call it reality, But it's just our personal reality. It's very subjective. Where if you and I had been born in a mud hut in Black Africa, we would think and feel differently about virtually everything under the sun, right?
Right.
And of course, there's no right or wrong to this. There's just diversity. There's just different points of view. So I think really getting down to the roots and understanding what life is all about, the purpose of life, and then also your personal life purpose, is a journey that most people are either consciously or semi-consciously on during their whole life. Because I believe that we all are unique. We all have a very specific personal life purpose. And if we're not aware of that, and we're not living that, and we're not in sync with that, I think there's a very profound existential frustration and malaise, where it's like, I'm not doing what I came to do. And I really want to do that. I really have this intuitive, inspired compulsion to help other people in distinctive ways, to help myself, to really, I love that phrase that the Army used, the US Army, years ago as a recruiting phrase, and it was called "Be All You Can Be," Right. And I always thought, yeah, that's it. It's not only about doing, it's about being on a really deep level. And so I think that transitions are a very interesting topic, because my experience shows me that there's predominantly 3 phases to a transition. The first, ironically, is ending. Every transition begins with an ending. It's usually the end of a job, the end of a relationship, and oftentimes in midlife, it's a change in, or the loss of a particular sense of self. It's like kind of we've outgrown ourselves. It isn't working like it used to, and we start looking for that something else, and we don't know what it is, and we look for it externally, but really it's an internal search. And so understanding that process and moving through those phases is really important, because we can get stuck for years. And I don't know if you ever saw this quote by a lady named Mignon McLaughlin. She says, "What you are is the price you paid to get what you used to want." And I thought, man, that really nails it, because I've paid a high price, as have you, through our education and our efforts and sometimes even struggles, to get what we used to want. And now we want something different, because we're more mature, we're more sophisticated, we're more refined, we've evolved, So this journey of transition is ongoing. And I think it's really important to kind of recognize that fact and kind of get comfortable with transitions, because they're not going to go away.
No, absolutely not. And as you said, they literally affect every aspect of our life. Like a transition could be, at least in my sphere of existence, becoming a parent, changing careers, you know, the loss of a loved one, or, things, they can be negative, they can also be positive as well. But sometimes we get stuck in this limbo, and the real skill comes when we can develop practical methods to assist that process and learn from it.
Well, for sure, because, if we boiled it all down, I think we're all looking for 4 key things. And one is to feel important, that we're on track, that we're valuable. That goes back to our personal life purpose. Also, meaningful relationships, because we didn't come here to experience isolation, It is a connected world, and we do have roles to play. And then the third thing is a successful career, our work, particularly for men. This is a dynamic expression of who we are at the deepest level. And I think a lot of people are in jobs they don't like. I've seen a statistic that 75% of people work in jobs they don't really love. And isn't that sad? And therefore, there's these funny phrases like, thank God it's Friday, or around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there's something in all the restaurants and bars called happy hour, which is kind of sad to see, but it's telling. And finally, I think the last thing is a fulfilling sense of self. It's like, who am I? Because we do have a mortality. There is a clock ticking all the time. And who are we really? What do we want? These kinds of questions, I think, are something that when we ask them, we're looking for alignment. We're looking for congruency with what means the most to us on the inside, and then what we're doing in the outer world. And so I was always impressed with this ex-CEO of General Electric. His name was Jack Welch, and he wrote a book about his secrets of success. And he said every year he made a list at the end of the year of his primary activities and the people in his life, and even the primary thoughts that he was thinking. And he really spent a lot of time listing all of these various things in his whole life. He sort of did an autopsy of all of it, and then he prioritized them all. And then he said, I take a scissors and I cut the bottom 10% off every year to make room in the new year for a new 10%. And when I read that, I thought, that sounds so appealing to me, because a lot of us do get stuck and we resist transition. I shouldn't say we resist. Our egos resist transition. Our higher self is always wanting to go to that higher level, right? It wants to learn and grow and mature and evolve. And it's inspired on this heroic quest to be all we can be. But the ego always wants to kick back, follow the path of least resistance, and it worships homeostasis because it's in the energy saving mode, So learning is like, what are you talking about, And so that's why a lot of people just drink beer and watch TV, and I kind of envy them sometimes, because it's like, sometimes it's nice to call a time out, but, and nothing wrong with beer or TV, of course, but it's a perspective. And I think that meditation is one of those processes that would qualify for speeding up transitions. Because a lot of times I ask people this question, and this is like probably the hardest question anybody could ever answer. And if you ran into a magic genie and he said, I've got this magic bottle, and in this bottle, I'm going to pull out one free pass. I'm going to give you this particular blessing, and you can choose whatever it is. And this blessing will allow you to be successful at whatever it is you choose. There's no limitation. Whatever you choose, you're going to achieve full maximum success with. What do you want? So the question is, who would you be And what would you do if you knew that you could not fail?
Wow.
Isn't that a wild question? And you know, it's like you can't spit something out easily about that. It's like, hey, I have this one miraculous blessing. What the heck do I really want underneath all my desires, you know? And if somebody were to ask me this question today, I think my answer would be something like, I really want to understand and operate the magnetic laws of the universe on a deeper and more conscious level. And that's what I am doing in my life. You know, I'm really finally growing up. It's embarrassing because, you know, I ask myself regularly, you know, 5 years from now, you know, what is the most exciting thing I'm doing? You know, so I'm visualizing, I'm looking ahead, I'm trying to get that clarity and that depth, because to me, these are very important questions, you know, and I don't want to be passive about it. And I am now, I think, flirting more and more with my intuition and that inner guidance and connecting with my higher self. So my life path is really going vertical now. I am able to achieve so much more with so much less effort than ever that it feels like a miracle, Joey. And I equate it to kind of a gear shift. And like in the old days with a stick shift in a car, you know, you're shifting through the gears. And it's a great metaphor because what a gear shift allows is greater speed with lower RPMs. Doesn't that sound great? And I think it is possible.
Sure.
Because we can work smarter or be more in tune with laws of nature. Because in the past, I used to like make effort. If I mastered anything in this life, in the first 2/3 of my life, it would be making effort. And the big tools in my toolbox were my intelligence and my willpower. And this is very Anglo-Saxon, right? You know, we're worker bees, you know, let us at it. You know, it's like we will complete the deal, you know, and we will show up and we will be responsible. But it was hard, you know, where people like Yogananda, like Jesus, like the masters and the heroes, you know, they're not always grinding and struggling and efforting their way through life. They have twinkles in their eyes because they're in tune with inner guidance. You know, they have insights, they're receiving clues. And I'm more in tune with that these days than I ever have been. And so I'm just so thrilled. And this is what I'm teaching.
Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for part 2, which is coming very soon. Are there any topics you'd like me to cover? Please feel free to leave me a comment below. I would love to hear back from you. And lastly, do you want to stay updated on all my latest video releases? Please be sure to subscribe. Thanks and have a nice day.